The first time he crossed my gate like it didn't belong there, I knew exactly what kind of man I was dealing with. Some people knock, some wave from the road and wait. He unhooked my chain with one hand, rolled straight onto my gravel like he'd been invited, and smiled at his dashboard camera while doing it. That was the moment I realized this wasn't gonna be about land. It was gonna be about pride. My name's Daniel Mercer, and I've lived outside Cedar Hollow, Montana, for close to 20 years now. My place sits way back off County Route 18 at the end of a long gravel lane I paid for myself, built section by section with rented equipment and more weekends than I care to count. Quarter-mile of compacted rock and drainage ditches, every culvert placed by hand. Every spring I regrade washouts after snowmelt. It's private land, private road, private everything. And I like it that way. That road leads only to my house and workshop. There's a steel chain at the entrance and a weathered sign nailed to a cedar post that says private road, no trespassing. It's old enough now the paint's cracked around the edges, been there since before I moved in. Next to me sat 15 acres of rough hillside nobody wanted. Loose rock, scrub pine, uneven ground. Beautiful if you liked wild country, useless if you wanted to build anything. County had auctioned it twice over unpaid taxes. Nobody bit. Then along came Owen Calloway. You ever meet somebody whose whole personality feels like they're performing even when nobody asked? That was Owen. He was one of those off-grid lifestyle guys online. Big beard trimmed just messy enough to look intentional, expensive flannel shirts made to look worn, always filming himself chopping wood or talking about freedom and independence while plugging survival gear through affiliate links. 500,000 followers, maybe more. He bought that hillside cheap at auction and announced online he was building the last real self-reliance homestead in America. I only knew that because my buddy Hank sent me the video laughing. "Looks like you got a celebrity next door," he told me. I shrugged, didn't care, at first. The issue hit me about a week later. I was splitting cedar near the barn when I heard tires on gravel, which made no sense because nobody should have been on that road. I turned around and there he was, lifted truck, matte black, sponsor decals across both sides, hood camera mounted front and center. He had already taken down the chain, didn't ask, didn't hesitate, just drove right through. I stepped into the lane and raised a hand. He stopped maybe 10 feet from me, leaned out his window smiling like we were old friends. "Hey man, Owen Calloway." "Yeah," I said, "I know." He grinned wider. "Great, makes this easier." He pointed past me toward the ridge. "Bought the parcel behind you. Looks like this road's the cleanest access." I stared at him. "It's not access." His smile tightened. "It's the only way back there." "Not my problem." That landed. You could see it, like somebody shut a switch off behind his eyes. Then he tried charm. "Come on, neighbor to neighbor. We both benefit here. Community matters out in places like this." I folded my arms. "This road cost me years of work. You don't get to drive through because you bought land without checking how to reach it." He laughed, but it sounded thinner. "There's got to be some flexibility." "There is." He looked at the chain hanging off the post, then back at me. "You know there are legal ways this can go." I said, "Then I guess we'll both find out." That afternoon, I replaced the chain with a heavier one and a new lock. I figured maybe that'd be enough. I was wrong. 2 days later, FedEx dropped a thick envelope on my porch. Law firm out of Billings. Owen was claiming access by necessity and demanding immediate use of my road. I sat there at the kitchen table reading it twice while coffee went cold. Then I called Laura Bennett, best land use attorney within 80 miles and one of the few people I know who can read a property map and somehow look amused. She came by the next afternoon with old county records spread across my dining table. Owen's land had never once been part of mine, not 50 years ago, not 100, not ever. Laura adjusted her glasses and smiled. He bought a landlocked parcel and assumed confidence would fix it. So he has no case. He has no good one. Sure enough, he filed anyway. And while the paperwork started rolling through county channels, Owen kept posting online. Drone footage, big dramatic music. Talking about his future, compound and freedom, and the challenges of building in untamed country. Never said my name, didn't need to, locals knew. And every now and then when I drove into town for supplies, somebody would ask, "That influencer guy really suing you?" I'd nod, then go about my day. But one evening right before sunset, I saw him standing near the locked gate filming another video, talking to the camera with mountains behind him, pointing at my road, smiling like he'd already won. And I remember thinking that confidence looked real good when there wasn't a judge involved. What I didn't know then was that the courtroom would only be round one, because losing wasn't about to stop Owen Calloway. It was about to make him dangerous. Turns out I was right about one thing: Owen losing didn't humble him, not even a little. It just made him louder. Court was set 3 weeks later at the county building in Cedar Hollow. Small courtroom, wood-paneled walls, old fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the kind of place where everybody knows everybody and there's nowhere to hide behind a fancy image. Owen showed up looking exactly like he did online, boots polished clean, dark denim, camera crew trailing him through the hallway like he was filming some documentary about surviving oppression. Laura leaned toward me and whispered, "That'll play great on YouTube, not so much in here." And she was right. The judge, Margaret Delaney, had been handling land disputes in this county longer than either of us had lived here. Sharp eyes, zero patience. Owen's attorney opened with the whole necessity argument. Said the property had no practical access, that my refusal created hardship, that neighboring cooperation was expected in rural communities. Laura didn't even blink. She laid out county maps dating back over a century, tax records, parcel boundaries. Then she made the whole thing painfully simple. Owen Calloway purchased land he knew or should have known, had no legal access. My client is not responsible for solving that oversight. Judge Delaney looked at Owen. "Did you verify legal access before purchase?" He hesitated, that tiny half-second pause, then said, "I believed it was implied." The judge actually took her glasses off. "Land ownership doesn't operate on implication." That was basically the end of it. Case dismissed. No easement, no access, no rights over my road. Owen walked out stiff-jawed and red-faced. His camera crew kept filming. Laura gathered papers and smiled. Well, that was easy. I wish she'd been right. Because 48 hours later, Owen posted a 20-minute video titled "The Hidden War Against Independent Living," and suddenly my quiet little gravel road got introduced to the internet. He never said my full name, didn't need to. Drone shots of the valley, close-ups of my gate, video clips from the courtroom parking lot. A carefully edited version of events where he was the hard-working guy chasing a dream and I was some bitter landowner trying to keep him out. Comments exploded. Thousands. A few locals texted to warn me, my inbox filled with strangers calling me selfish, greedy, a gatekeeper. Some genius from Arizona sent a 6-paragraph email about freedom and tyranny. One guy from Idaho threatened to drive out and cut the chain himself. I ignored every single one. Blocked numbers. Deleted emails, fed the dog. Stacked firewood, went on with my life. But Owen couldn't let it go. 3 months later, Hank called me early one morning. "You seeing this?" "Seeing what?" "He's moving equipment onto the North Ridge." I grabbed binoculars, sure enough. Excavator, dump trailer, contractor trucks. Owen had found another route, opposite side of his land, where terrain dropped into a steep, rocky draw. Absolute nightmare of a build. The kind of place where every foot costs money. He was throwing money like gasoline. I watched over the next few weeks. Rock blasting, drain pipe, grading, temporary bridge supports. Even from my porch I could hear machinery echoing off the hills. Hank came by one afternoon, watched with me from the fence line. "Think he pulls it off?" I shrugged. "If he spends enough," and he did. Word around town was 80 grand, maybe more. But eventually he had a road, ugly as hell, steep enough to make my knees hurt looking at it, but legal. And Owen turned it into content. Weekly updates. Drone flyovers, victory music, followers cheering him on, talking about resilience and overcoming adversity. I'll give him this, he knew how to sell a comeback story. For a little while it actually looked like he'd won. Solar panels started arriving, shipping containers, lumber, contractors, generators. Then one Thursday around noon I heard another vehicle climbing the ridge. White state trucks. Department of Environmental Quality. 2 of them. I knew before Owen did. That slope cut close to a wetland basin. Locals knew it. Everybody knew spring runoff pooled there, protected land, hard to touch legally, impossible if you bulldoze through it. They were up there 6 hours, survey stakes, photos, paperwork. By evening, Owen looked like he'd swallowed a nail. The next morning, a bright orange stop work notice got posted near his access road. Construction halted immediately. Fine pending. Mandatory review. Restoration order. By the end of the week, numbers started floating around town. 40,000 in fines, maybe more depending on restoration. Rip out sections of road, regrade damaged runoff, replace vegetation, environmental consultants, months lost. I drove into Cedar Hollow Saturday morning for feed and coffee. The whole diner was talking about it. Martha at the register laughed so hard she nearly spilled cream. "That internet mountain man bulldozed into protected wetlands?" Hank nearly choked. Guess Mother Nature lawyered up. I didn't say much, just drank coffee, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't enjoying myself a little. A week later, just after sunset, there was a knock at my front door. I opened it, and there stood Owen. No camera, no truck decals, no performance, just him. Boots muddy, eyes tired, shoulders lower than I'd ever seen them. For a second, neither of us said anything. Then he cleared his throat. "I need your road." I leaned against the door frame. "Thought you solved that?" His jaw flexed. "I can't use the ridge route until restoration's approved. And contractors need access." I waited. He finally said it. "I'll pay." That almost made me laugh. "How much?" 5,000, 6 months. I looked at him, really looked. The same guy who smiled through my chain like it wasn't there. The same guy who put my gate online for 500,000 strangers, now standing on my porch asking permission. I said 10. He blinked. "For 6 months. No, 4. His face tightened. "That's steep." "Then use your other road." He exhaled hard. "Daniel, no, listen carefully." I stepped outside onto the porch. "You sued me, you painted me as the villain online, your followers sent threats to my house, so if we're doing business now, we do it my way." He stayed quiet. I held up a finger. 10 grand, paid up front. Second finger, "You cover any damage." Third, "Written agreement drafted by my attorney." He swallowed. Then I gave him the last one. "And you post a video telling the truth." That hit harder than the money. He stared. "What?" "The truth, you bought landlocked property, you sued me, you lost, and now you're paying to use my road." His eyes narrowed. "That'll make me look like an idiot." I gave him a tired smile. "Owen, you managed that part on your own." For a second I thought he'd walk, thought pride would win again. He looked out toward the locked gate, toward the ridge, toward the mess he'd created, then back at me. And in the quiet I saw it finally land, the weight of every shortcut he'd taken, every assumption, every camera-ready speech, every dollar. He nodded once. "Okay." And honestly, that one word sounded heavier than anything he'd said since moving next door. Laura drew up the agreement next morning. Payment wired same day. Gate unlocked. Contractors rolled through. And 3 nights later, Owen uploaded the hardest video he'd probably ever made. No dramatic music. No drone footage. No angry edits. Just him sitting on a folding chair near his unfinished site staring straight into camera. And for the first time since he arrived, he looked completely real. He sat there under a half-framed roof with the mountains behind him and the evening light fading out across the ridge. No sponsor banners, no cinematic drone footage, no carefully staged acts leaning against a stumper, just Owen in a folding chair looking like a man who'd finally run out of ways to edit reality. And he told the truth. I watched the whole thing from my kitchen table. He admitted he bought land without confirming legal access. Admitted he assumed he could force the issue. Admitted he sued and lost. Admitted he was now paying me to use my road while he dealt with the environmental restoration. He didn't say it dramatically, didn't spin it, didn't dress it up, just sat there and owned it. And I'll be honest, I respected that more than I expected to, because pride can make a man loud, but owning a mistake in front of hundreds of thousands of people, that takes something else. The comments were wild. A lot of people backed him for admitting it. A lot more absolutely roasted him. One guy wrote, "Turns out self-reliance starts with reading property records." Another said, "Bro really spent 6 figures learning what due diligence means." Hank sent me screenshots for 3 straight days. Even Martha at the diner had favorites printed out behind the counter. Town got a kick out of it. And for the next 4 months, Owen's crews used my road exactly like the contract said. Slow, respectful, no dust clouds, no blocking my driveway. No trucks before sunrise. Every tire stayed where it was supposed to. If something got loose near the shoulder, his foreman fixed it before I even asked. It was strange at first. Watching the same man who once pulled my chain down like it was decorative now stop at the gate, unlock it carefully, relock it behind him, and wave. Real polite. Like boundaries had suddenly become visible. Once in a while, he'd walk up while crews were loading lumber and we'd actually talk. Nothing deep. Mostly weather. Permits, how long county inspections were taking, but slowly the edge between us eased off. One evening he stood beside the workshop while I sharpened a blade and said, "You ever think maybe I deserved every bit of that?" I kept working. "Depends. On what? Whether you learned anything." He laughed under his breath, then looked out over the gravel lane. "I thought buying land was the hard part." I finally looked at him. "That's because you were buying a dream," he nodded. And dreams are cheap. Access roads aren't." That got a real laugh out of him, probably the first genuine one I'd heard. 4 months later, restoration approval came through. Wetland repairs passed, state signed off. His temporary road on the ridge reopened under stricter limits. Contractors finished moving equipment, and just like that our agreement ended. Gate locked again. Road quiet. Simple. He didn't ask to renew, didn't argue, didn't push. He walked up one afternoon, handed me a folder with inspection documents and repair receipts just to show everything had been covered. Then stuck out his hand. I shook it. He said, "I made your life harder than I needed to." "You did. Sorry." There wasn't much else to say, and honestly, there didn't need to be, because apologies matter more when they show up late and cost something. That winter came heavy. Snow buried both roads. Wind cut through the valley hard enough to shake windows. I saw smoke from Owen's chimney a few times, not much else. By spring he was back working, solar frames going up, water tanks, cabins, still building, still behind, still spending money, and that's the part social media never really shows, the long, boring, expensive reality after the big speeches end. Because building something real takes forever, especially after shortcuts fail. It's been 2 years now. His off-grid compound still isn't finished. Closer than before, but not done. He's gone quieter online, posts less. When he does it feels more grounded, less preaching, more honest. A couple months ago I passed him at the hardware store in Cedar Hollow. He was loading fencing supplies. He nodded, then smiled. "Road's still holding up. Better than yours," he laughed. "Fair." And that was that. Funny how things change. People online always want a clean villain and a clean hero. Somebody to cheer, somebody to blame. Real life's messier than that. Owen wasn't evil. He wasn't trying to steal from me because he hated me. He was a guy who got used to cameras rewarding confidence and forgot that land doesn't care about confidence. Property lines don't bend because somebody believes hard enough. And private means private whether you've got 1 follower or 500,000. I still drive that same gravel road every morning, still grade it after storms, still lock the chain, same cedar post, same old sign, weathered now, paint fading more every year. Private road, no trespassing. Sometimes I stop there before heading out and look toward the ridge. See Owen still building, still hauling materials uphill, still figuring things out the expensive way. And part of me actually hopes he finishes someday, not because he deserves easy, he definitely didn't. But because after everything, I think he finally understands what self-sufficiency really costs. Not hashtags, not gear, not talking big into a camera. Time, mistakes, humility. And paying for every inch you thought would come easy. Now I'm curious what you would have done. Would you have kept that gate locked no matter what? Would you have taken the money? Would you have made him tell the truth publicly before giving access? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I know this one's gonna split people right down the middle. And if you enjoy stories where pride gets expensive and boundaries actually mean something, hit like, subscribe, and stick around. Because out here the hardest lessons usually get learned 1 rough mile at a time.